First question for you. Um, Talking about COVID and the new restrictions put in by the Department of Health and Human Services, I spoke with Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist 2 days ago, and I asked him straight up about Republicans who feel that they've been left out of the process. This is what he said. They're not telling the truth about what happened. They were involved in data and modeling meetings. When we were asking them for what their ideas were, they literally had nothing to offer. We responded with policies. They responded with PSAs. What's your response to what the Lieutenant Governor told me?
Yeah, I'll just respond, Nick, with the facts. I would tell you this: since the Supreme Court case occurred, the governor and I have not had one-on-one conversation. Since the Supreme Court case occurred, the governor, Senate Majority Leader, and myself, the three of us, have not had one three-way phone call, one Zoom meeting, or one in-person meeting. And I'll also tell you this: of everything that the governor just did through the health director, not one of those items, Nick, not one, did she come to us and ask that we work with her on doing. And I think that's disappointing, because when you look to the very beginning of COVID, we led across the country in funding that we did early on for COVID. You look at that, we helped with some of the early executive orders. We even extended the first state of emergency because the governor was working with us. After that, we introduced a plan that was regional risk-based in the House. The governor didn't touch it, but we worked on spending billions of dollars together to fix certain things across our state. Go even further than that, Nick, recently. We did COVID liability protections. We did healthcare liability protections. We helped provide flexibility and certainty for our nursing homes. And then we finally get to this point after the Supreme Court case. The governor decided to go it alone again. The only policy the governor asked us for at all was a statewide mask mandate. And I will tell you this, Nick, that's even after the governor is already arguing that there is a mask mandate in effect right now. So if we're honest with ourselves, Nick, go into the local gas station, go into the local supermarket, go to your local school, wherever it is, whatever inside building or restaurant it is, people are wearing masks. I do believe masks reduce the rate of transfer of this virus. That's why I choose to wear one. That's why my family wears one. So we can have a conversation about what we can do together, Nick, but that conversation's not happening. The governor has refused multiple attempts of the majority leader and myself for the three of us to talk. And I think that's unfortunate. It goes against what the Supreme Court wanted. And I think when the governor's ready to get back here to the Capitol and negotiate with us, we'll be ready to.
Okay, you say the governor didn't ask you for your ideas. I'm asking you right now, what ideas do you have at this moment to combat COVID-19 in the state of Michigan?
Nick, you don't have to just simply go off my word. You can look at recent bills we introduced in the House. Not only did we introduce bills, that's a forward-thinking plan, Nick. What we need to do is to provide a metric for the people of our state that's based on data, that gives them something to shoot for, something to hope for. I think our small businesses, they have already figured it out. People need to understand that we believe if X limit is reached, then Y policy is put in place. What we need, Nick, is a forward-thinking plan that the governor will negotiate with us so we can roll it out in public with transparency, with accountability for the people of our state. The governor's plan right now, Nick, is not a forward-thinking plan. It's a reactionary plan. We're seeing a spread across the entire country right now. And the only reaction is to do shutdowns with no real end date other than we'll evaluate it in 3 weeks.
Okay, but you just said we need, what are the metrics for success is basically what you said. Right now, we are, as you just acknowledged as well, going in the wrong direction. So how do we reach those metrics is what I'm asking you. What policies do Republicans want implemented right now to bring down hospitalizations and infection numbers?
What we need to see right now, Nick, is a change in behavior across the entire state. That I'm going to tell you this, the law itself won't necessarily change people's behaviors every single time. But what we can do is have a conversation about what policies could be initiated. I'll tell you this, had the governor come to the majority leader and myself with some of these recent things that she just initiated, there may have been an appetite to implement some of those things. And I'll tell you what that would have done, Nick, is it wouldn't have made it the administration versus the legislature or Republican and Democrat. We have to get beyond that. We have to talk about what policies will help. We have to be in conversation with our healthcare officials, with our hospitals to know what bed capacity is and look at implementing some of these things. But Nick, with a metric, and I will tell you this, we can look up the recent bills we introduced in the House that I believe is forward thinking. Over the past couple of weeks in the House here, we've had a data team that's been working with the administration, not necessarily with the governor, but with the administration and sharing data. And then they decided to go it alone and enact these new policies. And I'm going to tell you this, Nick, with no empirical data or evidence, that restaurants are causing the spread. And what we're going to do is we are hurting people's livelihoods unnecessarily across our state. These restaurant owners, they deserve answers when they ask what data is being used. These
Okay.
restaurant owners, they deserve an answer. And right now they're not getting one. So I think it's unfortunate that now we're seeing restaurants and that entire industry bring lawsuit against the state of Michigan and against the governor, but I don't know what other recourse they have.
Okay, you make a point. The state's own numbers say only about 5% of spread is happening at bars and restaurants right now. So, and they are taking action. But I did ask you twice specifically what policies Republicans have. You said laws don't necessarily change behavior, and you did not give me a single policy.
So, Nick, I've told you that we've introduced two policies that you could look up. The first one that we introduced was a regional risk-based policy that would determine what type of restrictions you have based on what the bed capacity is like in your region, based on what the rate of transfer is like in your region. So the difference is, I guess, what maybe we're speaking past each other because you're asking me for a statewide mandate in a policy that we've introduced. The fact is, from the very beginning, I said we need a regional risk-based plan across the state that deals with it locally. We have introduced those plans. We have introduced those metrics. Those are out there right now. And based on what would occur in your local region would based on the restrictions that get put in place. But again, people across our state, we have to change our behaviors. You look at the business community, they have figured it out. I think there's still some internal things that we can do, that we can help, that we can change, but we've all got to be on the same page. And right now, there's too many people that don't trust this administration. And I think the governor is underestimating what can get accomplished when we all work together.
Okay, last question on this topic, then we'll move on. Just straightforward, is the state legislature preparing any more lawsuits like we saw a few months ago?
You know, we'll see what comes forward in the next couple of weeks, Nick. I mean, we are not in a position where we want to continue bringing lawsuit against this administration. We already did that once and we won. And when you look over the past couple of years, anytime the administration is overreached, we've won the lawsuit that we've brought against them. We're ready to just roll up our sleeves and work with this governor. And we are hopeful that that attitude will be reciprocated to us as well.
Okay, Representative Matt Maddock, member of your caucus, is now openly pushing for impeachment of Governor Whitmer over her COVID policies. Do you support his move on that?
You know, I think it's a distraction, Nick, from the real issues that we're facing here in our state, just off of this COVID conversation, right? It's no surprise. I've disagreed with a lot of what the governor has done. I've debated with the governor on a lot of these issues. I've even brought lawsuit against the governor in court to the Supreme Court and won regarding how she has handled COVID-19. But Republicans aren't the party that just impeach an individual because we disagree with them. We're not the party that impeaches an individual because we don't like their policies. That's what we just saw recently in Washington. It's what the Democrats did to Trump, and I didn't think that was right. The voters are soon going to have a chance to deal with Governor Whitmer in 2022, or if they chose and wanted to do it earlier, they could do a recall petition. So I disagree with the governor, but I don't think impeachment right now is the right step to take, and we won't be bringing it up in the House.
I was about to say you won't be bringing it up. You have the power as Speaker to prevent that from coming to the floor. Are you saying right now you would not allow that to come to the floor for discussion or a vote?
Well, I would tell you this, Nick. What I have the authority to do as Speaker or any Speaker around the country is not necessarily what comes to the floor or not, but once something is on the floor, whether or not it receives a vote. What I'm telling you right now is this: based on the facts that we know and what has occurred, I don't believe impeachment proceedings are the way to go for our state. We're ready to roll up our sleeves and work with this administration. I think what she's done has hurt many lives unnecessarily. I think we could have done this better, but I don't think her mishandling of COVID-19, in my opinion, is a cause for impeachment.
Okay, I want to move on to our last topic, the election. And just very quickly, are you prepared to say right now that Joe Biden has won the state of Michigan?
I'm prepared to say right now that when you look at the votes and how they're in, it appears that Joe Biden is in a lead unmistakably, right? What we're doing, Nick, that's not my job as the Board of State Canvassers to certify. It's not my job as the Secretary of State. But what my job is to do is to ensure we have fair elections. And I think with the reports of irregularities that we've had across the state, with the reports of fraud that we have heard from across the state, we need to investigate. And I believe, Nick, I'd be derelict of my duty with having heard these reports that I didn't look into it. So that's why we're doing these investigations statewide. That's why we've issued our subpoenas to receive this information. And if there is fraud, I hope it's found out and I hope these people are prosecuted. So, Nick, I'm going to stay in my lane and focus on what I can focus on. And that's to ensure that these elections are done the right way so people in the state of Michigan have peace of mind about what the result is.
If anyone lied on any of those affidavits, and I read all 250 plus pages of them, if anyone is found to have lied on any of those affidavits, should they be prosecuted as well?
Anyone who committed fraud in our state should be prosecuted, and anyone who lied on an affidavit should be prosecuted. There's nothing more important in our country, Nick, than having integrity in our election process, and that is very serious. So the reports that we've heard, we take seriously, and we're going to look into it, and we want to make sure that there was no fraud in Michigan, and we want to ensure that we can prevent it. If there was, how do we prevent it from happening again in future elections?
Because so far, every single one of these lawsuits, as you know, has been tossed. And the president's own government has said this was the safest and most secure election in history, and then fired the person who said that actually yesterday. Um, it is very easy for a party that just won the presidency to say it's time to heal. Both parties do that every 4 years, no matter who wins the presidency. Do you think right now that elections are willing and ready to heal with Joe Biden as president?
You know what? I think a lot of that, Nick, right now will depend on where we go from here. If we can validate the election in Michigan, I think there can be healing. You know, Republicans are not the party of focusing or making up a Russian collusion. We're not the party of a fake impeachment process. We're not the party that says not my president. We're not the party that has signs that say resist for 4 years. But we are the party to make sure that we run these elections the right way. And if we can prove these elections were run the right way, then we accept the results and we move on. That's what I would encourage people to do, whether Republicans or Democrats. We have to validate this election. We have to make sure with certainty that it was done the right way without fraud. And then we move on as a country, no matter what the results are, Nick.
What do you make then of last night in Wayne County when the two Republican canvassers at first refused to certify the election results? And then at one point said, let's certify Wayne County outside of Detroit, an 80% black city, and then eventually relented before the evening was over.
You know, I haven't followed that too closely, Nick, but by the accounts that I read in the media that I read, it seemed that the two people who were on the Board of Canvassers there in Wayne County believed that there was fraud and they didn't feel comfortable certifying something with there being irregularities and the ballots not matching up. I don't know the specifics in Wayne County and I don't know the specifics of the city of Detroit, but I do know they had some discomfort certifying it with there being massive irregularities. And how can I blame someone who their job is to certify and to make sure there was no fraud? And when you have ballots not matching up, whether it's Republican or Democrat, Nick, how can we blame someone for having some uncertainty about whether to certify it? So I'm beginning to get caught up on what happened in Wayne County. I've been speaking with different people in my caucus who are following more closely to that. And I want to make sure that I'm brought up to speed on exactly what happened.
Last question, and then I'll let you get out. Right now, Reuters has a story out that shows 68% of Republicans think the presidential election was rigged. All of these lawsuits, what happened last night in Wayne County, during an election when most numbers show it was no different from the primary, it's been no different than any other previous general election. The only difference now are lawsuits and calls for fraud when there is absolutely zero evidence to show any. Do you think that this is hurting trust in democracy and our elections in this country?
I think when you look at the last couple of elections that have occurred in our country, presidential elections, with there being what I think are unfounded accusations of Russian collusion, and when you look at now with there being the wide reports of fraud that we are now investigating, I think unfortunately people have lost some confidence and some faith and some certainty in the integrity of the election process. And Nick, that's why we're doing these investigations, so we can restore that trust. That's why we're doing these investigations and have issued these subpoenas, so we can restore that certainty. And that is my goal, so that the people of the state of Michigan know our results when they're certified are the legitimate results of the state of Michigan.
All right, one more question because I missed it in my sheet here, if I can trouble you. The working theory that's being reported by Rudy Giuliani is that they want to prevent votes from being certified, sort of like what almost happened in Wayne County last night. And Jenna Ellis with the Trump campaign actually tweeted out right after they immediately refused to certify. She said that if the state board of canvassers follows suit, not certifying, the Republican state legislature would select the electors. Huge win for Donald Trump. Do you agree with her assessment at all? And would you ever try to appoint electors for Donald Trump when he looks as though he's lost the state of Michigan by close to 150,000 votes?
You know, Nick, I have not been following very closely to everything Rudy Giuliani or other attorneys for the Trump administration or the campaign have been saying.
I just explained it to you pretty clearly, though.
What I would tell you is my personal opinion that whoever wins the most votes in the state of Michigan gets our electors. That is my job to ensure that that happens. It's my job to ensure that the Board of State canvassers do that. All I'm doing, Nick, is my job, which is to ensure we're investigating reports of crime or fraud. We're investigating reports of irregularities. Once we do that and the votes are tallied, whoever wins the most votes in Michigan gets our electors. I think it's that simple. So right now, I'm going to stay out of my lane. I'm going to let the Board of State canvassers do their job, and I'm going to focus on my job.